We've got brand new evidence showing the Biden administration knew that its Autopen pardons were legally flawed, and its own DOJ lawyers even sounded the alarm. At the same time, a New York appeals court just threw out Tish James's massive $500 million penalty against Donald Trump, setting up for another showdown in the courts. So joining us now with all the receipts is Mike Howell. He's the president of the Oversight Project. So Mike, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, I feel bad if we're butting in here on your vacation. Is the Federalist Papers at least close by right now?
No. It's vacation, but it's business. We're about, a couple miles from where Joe Biden fell off his bike a few summers ago. So I come here every year to pay homage to gravity.
I absolutely love that. So let's go ahead and get to Joe Biden. Let's get to the Autopen. Tell us about the internal emails that you guys have been able to obtain from the DOJ.
Yeah, so I'm a little biased here, of course, but this is a big one. It is the first written black and white evidence of disagreement in the senior-most levels of the Biden camp as they're related to the Autopen pardon spree. A lot of our critics along the way, of course, initially the New York Times said it was a conspiracy theory. And then later, just a month ago, they had Joe Biden interviewed for a while where he talked about his commutations and pardons at the last minute of what he called nonviolent drug offenders. Well, we got an email, much in the thanks to Ed Martin, who is a real superstar for this. But the email is the day after those 2,500 commutations went out. And it is from the DOJ on a Saturday morning. Bradley Weinsheimer is his name, the top career official, Merrick Garland's favorite person at DOJ. And he goes off on Saturday morning, outlining all the reasons why these are not enforceable commutations. They make no sense. They need further direction from the White House. Read between the lines there, from the president and not an Autopen. And moreover, that the actual interpretation of the very vague thing that Biden allegedly announced would apply to, guess what, a lot of violent criminals, and that it did. And so in Biden's grand, commutation of 2,500 plus, caught up in there were people who shot cops, who killed witnesses, who were kingpins that are now back on the streets for the most part. Silver lining, some of them are still in federal prison because he shortened their sentences, but there's still some are serving it out. Trump could refuse to release them.
This is good news. The good news, though, in terms of getting to the truth of these things, but it also the story never stops to amaze me, because you do have to sit back every once in a while and put yourself and just go, so we really did have, probably as bad or worse of case of any time in American history, a president who was dysfunctional sitting there in that office with these clowns around him. What's the temperature like now? Do you think, you've been on the show talking about the fact that these people, maybe the DOJ wasn't working as fast as they should be on some of these matters. And, you wanted to see more action from the administration. There's a lot of busy people doing a lot of different things. But where are we at now? Same?
I feel good about where we're at. Look, we've been talking about this for months, and I've clearly been frustrated that action has not been taken. But we understand there's a lot of priorities out there. President Trump and his team have a lot on their plates. I think, as President Trump's called this the greatest scandal of the century, it deserves resolution. But I feel good about it for a few reasons. One, this is low-hanging fruit. It requires President Trump simply to not release people from jail. It is less complicated than charging Schiff, the January 6th committee, Fauci or Milley, which I think obviously he should do, but this is an easier first step to start getting at the Autopen writ large. Second, Chairman Comer came out today. He had a bombshell interview with Ian Sams. Some of y'all may remember him from the Biden years. He was their spokesperson for all matters of, investigations, oversight, and controversy. He was one of the talking heads on social media, always responding that Biden was perfectly fit, well-to-do, and in full control. Well, guess what Comer found out today? Ian Sams only met with Biden twice over the course of the entire administration. And there's apparently a lot more in that transcribed interview. And so we're hitting a big crescendo here. And I think with some of the shakeups with Bailey coming into the FBI, who's got a history on this issue as well, the odds are looking better than they ever have. And I think a lot of that is thanks to Ed Martin, who pushed this document out to the Oversight Project.
Yeah, so we've been seeing this Biden Autopen story go on since I believe March is when this first came on the scene. So we just look at the politicization of the DOJ, and we've been talking about that on this show for months. How do we look at this now? Knowing what we know now, what does this actually look like in the big picture of things?
I think it's clarifying. Obviously, a ton of damage has been done to the little good legacy Joe Biden had as a political figure dominant in American politics for 50 years. The fact that he had to go to the New York Times to do a cleanup job, which actually ended up working in the service of confirming our own reporting and investigation, which then is further confirmed by Biden's DOJ, I think is evidence that this is going to, be historic. And what changes things from just a footnote or a political conversation is actual accountability. But with the news that has come out with this email, it is no longer a right-wing, left-wing thing at all. You don't need to agree with the Oversight Project or Blaze and the mandate. You can agree with Biden's own Department of Justice that this was wrong. And so I think with that wind in our sails, we can, change not only the course of history's reckoning with it, but the actual practical legal fortunes for a lot of these people who shouldn't be out on the streets. And then furthermore, which has always been my objective and the objective of this investigation, get the administrative state absolutely back into its little box or completely destroyed. You cannot have a government run by Autopen. We have a constitutional republic which vests that power in a president. That is how this country should operate, and that's what the Autopen investigation is ultimately about and why we care so deeply about it.
Mike, what about Congress and all this? I mean, is there anything Congress should be doing, now to assist, moving the conjunction with your efforts? And is there anything Congress should do to ensure that this crap never happens again?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Chairman Comer's doing a great job. He's one guy, but he doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have a badge. He can't lock people up. What he can do is produce evidence that prods DOJ and the Trump administration into acting. And so, separate and apart from the investigative function, one thing that the Senate zeroed in on when Theo Wold from the Oversight Project's board testified was exactly what could the legislative fix be. And it's actually pretty simple because the 25th Amendment is what we're talking about. What happens when you have an incapacitated president? And what should happen, according to the 25th Amendment, is the VP and cabinet take a vote. And a majority vote prevails, they alert the Congress, and the rest kicks in to get a new president. But that process also envisions any other body that Congress may deem necessary. And so Congress, in the Constitution, has room to legislate a solution for future, Autopen type situations. And I think that's something they should really look at. It needs not a constitutional amendment. It could be done by legislation, and it really not be too onerous or, limit the president's authority. I think baseline checks to ensure that actually there is a pulse and the lights are on in someone's home in the White House would be a completely appropriate thing for Congress to legislate.
All right, you talked about Eagle Ed Martin on this show, and we've talked about him before, too. And we talked about him this week in regards to Letitia James. He had that trench coat standing outside her house. Now we get the actual action coming through. Trump's massive $500 million civil fraud fine has been thrown out by the New York appeals court. Now, I'm sure, Mike, that this is not going to be the end of it. They're not just going to sit down and take this. But at least for right now, $500 million is a little too egregious, even for a New York appeals court.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I was thrilled to, briefly scroll through the decision and see that they basically agreed with the Eighth Amendment claim of, excessive fines and punishment, because what can be more clear than $500,000 fine that was essentially a campaign attack through the court system. And so they got to the core nub of this, of the constitutional abuse. They didn't throw this out on some legal technicality. It was massive red flag that this was the weaponization that we called it at the time, and not only in violation of New York laws, procedures, and just values and ethics, but a flagrant violation of the Constitution. And so that's great. And President Trump's legal team has defended these things exceptionally well. But now we're on the offense, and Eagle Ed Martin is soaring over there. If you think about the real targets, setting aside Epstein for a moment, Letitia James, mortgage fraud. Adam Schiff, mortgage fraud. The Autopen. Ed Martin is producing and moving on all of those things. And we're also hearing rumblings of grand juries being convened. And so, as a critic, a supportive critic, I'll call it, constructive critic, I have to applaud that these steps are being taken. And this particular shout out, Ted Martin, even if his fingerprints aren't on exactly everything, I know him to be the driving force and representing the voice of, the base that wants to see these things move and to make sure they're at the top of the priority list over there.
Yeah, we can't. It's so true. You can't praise the people who are actually doing things and pushing the agenda forward and actually trying to implement the mandate enough. And we really should do more of that, on our side. But kudos to Ed Martin for sure. But since you are the grumpy pusher of the administration sometimes, which we love, because that's what we're here for it. You are. I don't know if I go so far as to say black-pilled on immigration, but you are someone who is saying there is not enough happening. And, earlier on the show, we were talking with Chris Bedford. Maybe we get two of you on the same time. We have a little fight. But, Chris was going through some of the great achievements of this administration, reaching the tipping point, right, and reversing the trend of illegal immigration into this country. But what do you say?
Yeah, so I'm not blackpilled because it is so easy to fix. The problem right now is policy, and because the funding problem's out of the way with the one big beautiful bill and all of the money that's flowing in. Look, closing the border and sealing the border, massive historic success. Tom Homan got that done before DHS leadership was even sworn in. It was so fast. Right now, my issue with deportation pace is the only thing we should be talking about. The numbers. And as I've long said, I want commas in those numbers and, to be well over 1 million per year, which is what the promise was, the mandate, when President Trump continually harkened back to the Eisenhower program and in Agenda 47 said the largest deportation effort ever. And so, look, this administration gets pressure from the left every day. And by that, I mean even Republicans on the left saying you're going too far. And so what I'm trying to do, and others who think the same way, are saying, no, we agree with what you said you were going to do. And we want to give you guys the wind behind your sails to go and do that. But that means getting the numbers up. And now here is the isolated problem. The one thing that is preventing us and the royal, us, the administration and states and Congress and even, the Trump administration. It is the prioritization, the focus on quality, we'll say, over quantity. For communication purposes, this administration has really leaned in a defensive nature to rolling and deporting criminal illegal aliens. Well, the truth of it is there aren't that many criminal illegal aliens, probably only 400,000, 500,000. So even if you got rid of all of them, you're not anywhere close to mass deportations. And so I would love to see the administration just, get rid of the naysayers, the detractors, and not care about the CNN headlines of saying you can't deport someone unless they've committed a crime. And with that one little policy switch, which I think is coming, by the way, now that the money's there, the numbers can skyrocket. So I'm not blackpilled. I'm drinking hopium because I just know it's so easy to do if you just get rid of that one, cap on it.
I mean, the Cornhusker Clink, it's a great name. 280 beds isn't really doing it for you, though, I don't think, Mike. When you look at that, I want commas in these numbers. That is the best way to say this. Now, in the time that we have left with you, I have an issue, Mike. And I scroll through Twitter. You know that I'm looking to see what Mike Howell is up to before he comes on the show. I don't know. I think you're baiting me with this post. You were saying dropping docs and rocking Crocs. Oversight is not a hobby, it's a lifestyle. And he said by any time that anybody else has been finished tying their shoes, Howell is halfway through finishing the first page of doc reviews. And then you post this picture of your gray Crocs with your gray slacks, and you just expect me not to say anything. Like you put that out on the internet for a reason, Mike.
It's a form of clickbait. It's called rage bait. That's what he was doing, is rage baiting some of you.
I saw it yesterday and I had to wait for the show. I said, do not engage online, wait for the show.
Sometimes you get those juicy documents that come in, you put your Crocs into sport mode and you get to reviewing. There's not enough time to tie your shoes. We're talking 30 seconds there. That could be spent on oversight. That's how we roll.
Mike,
unabashed. He doesn't care.
I have so many other questions. Are the Crocs only because you're in vacation mode? Is that why? Or is this like a normal daily thing?
Yeah, like, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a transparent guy. I believe in transparency, so I got to be honest here. I enjoyed the Crocs, the flexibility, the hard plastic, the snuggly feel to it. You can wear them to the store. You can wear them inside. A very versatile shoe. It's one of the benefits of modern, frankly, technology in the shoe industry.
So we have to remind our audience and you, if you don't know, that OW Root needs to call his office. Our occasional fashion writer, he writes for the site now. He's been on the show. He wrote an article about Crocs, and he took the other position, Mike. He was against them, and when he did that, the comments went almost fully divided between
50-50.
People who said yes, he's right, and people who said screw you, I like my Crocs.
Yeah, well, you know what? If he wants to drop breaking investigations every day with his own shoes, he can go ahead and do that. But don't knock the fashion unless you're dropping the dogs. We're rocking the Crocs and dropping the dogs.
I
So
got
you got to walk the walk to talk the talk.
I'm gonna start a fund. We're gonna get them loafers. They're not gonna have laces. It's just gonna be a shoe with no laces that you can just easily put on. Mike Howell, we do appreciate you dropping the docs. We always appreciate you coming on the show to talk about it, but I don't know if I can support rocking the Crocs.
Well, we'll get you a pair. We'll see if we can change your mind. They really. We'll get you the gimballs you put on it that little kids have.
Yeah, you can save your money, Mike. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time.
I'll see you guys.